All right, good day. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another Live the Fuel show. So we've been at this since 2016. It's now 2024 as I'm recording this. It's been a hot minute, or thousands. So as you guys all know, newer listeners, we bring on amazing new guest co-hosts from all different walks of life because the tagline of this show is we're here to fuel your health, business, and lifestyle. So this gentleman I'm bringing on today, I'm actually excited because he and I connect in a different way, which we'll get into, and hint, hint, firefighting background, but just that first responder world. But he's also an entrepreneur. He actually got started before I did. He started like 19. So I will bow to that. I don't think I figured that out, God, until into my 30s, actually, thanks to after firefighting. So there you go, people. Sometimes your hustle starts early. Sometimes your hustle starts later in life. That's a little hint, hint to the listeners out there of different generations and different backgrounds. But this gentleman, he started one heck of a little franchise here. We've had a few franchisee or franchisors. He can help me clarify all those terminologies on the show, different businesses, different walks of life. But the point here is that I bring on co-hosts like him. It's not to promote the business, but it's the inspiration behind it, right? What is the vision he brings to the table? Why is he a successful business operator or a franchisee? Why has he been featured in Forbes and Entrepreneur magazine and all these different sites that are out there? Well, it takes a passionate person to get into health and wellness. And if you can tie that into your business, as I've done on and off over the years, you realize you could be a hell of a lot more successful. So without further ado, today's new guest co-host today is Sam Tejada. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate you having me on your show here and me being the co-host here.
Yeah. And are you standing like I am? Because I don't understand
I
sitting.
am.
Like, what
Dude,
is this,
I
what
love
is this sitting thing?
No, there's no sitting, man. You know how it's like. You got to be on your feet.
I had my wife 2 weekends ago. We had just gotten back from skiing in Colorado. We're big mountain people. We don't go to the warm weather. We go to the cold weather. It's just who we are. And they came in from New York City. We had not seen their kids before, and we were taking them for their first day of skiing here in Pennsylvania. So it's not as exciting as Colorado, but we had them stay over. And the husband had come into my office here in my studio, and he goes, "Dude, what in the world is going on in here?" I'm like, "Oh, well, I'm a podcaster and I train companies and everything else." And he goes, "I live in New York City, and this is like the size of half of our." And I was like, "Well, thanks." I took the second largest bedroom. We don't have kids. And he's like, "What's all this tech?" I was like, "If you ever want to learn, if you ever want to launch a podcast, it didn't start this way, right?" That's what I love about it. Like, I didn't always have ring lights and a command center and a whole control center and all this stuff. I started off with like a portable recorder and a little simple microphone. And I was doing live meetings in Starbucks doing my podcast thing.
Hey, you got to start somewhere.
Right? So I figured we could start there, right? Like, you were a firefighter, you were a paramedic.
Right.
Let's hit on that. We kind of talked briefly before we started the show. I was U.S. Forest Service. I went from farm kid turned corporate monkey to finding out about wildland firefighting. I'm like, well, that looks adventurous, and I hate my corporate gig, so I'm going to go there, risk my life, and not get paid anywhere near what I made in the corporate life, because that seems fun. Now, the average person hears that story or reads my book, so you want to be a hotshot, and they're like, "What's wrong with you?" And I like to hit on that because people of your walk of life and my background, I like creating that little shock factor. I think people need to understand that in order to be successful, you got to do things out of the ordinary. So kind of help catch the audience up, man, on your background on that.
So yeah, I firefighted 12 years. I was out on the road here in South Florida. I worked for the city of Oakland Park Fire Rescue, which is right in the dead center of Fort Lauderdale. It basically, we ran the busiest parts of the interstate, I-95, a lot of warehouses and very inner city, low income. So we got a little bit of everything, a lot of action, if you will. So
you're the urban guy, and I'm the one in the middle of the woods, not coming across anybody.
Yeah, I don't know if I would do what you did. I got
that
all
all
the
the time.
Other monster.
People, and then I talk to professionals like you, and I'm like, I don't want to run into a burning building, and they're like, Yeah, but you're trying to fight Mother Nature. I'm like, listen, we're going to have to agree to
Right.
disagree. It's 6 and 1, half a dozen the other. Mother Nature can rear her ugly head. And if you're in Florida, you understand what high winds can do to a fire. So
Right.
I'm sure hurricane season has affected fires in the city limits, right? So
Oh yeah.
you got a little
Oh yeah.
taste of it. You got a little taste of it. So
Yeah.
yeah. So 11 years. And where's the shift, man? Like what was the pivot?
So, I mean, I went into the fire department at a young age. I
Mm.
went straight into EMT, paramedic, fire school, straight out of high school.
Wow.
And I always had that hustler mentality when it came to business. So just like most other firemen, we work those 24 hours on, we're off for 48 hours. Everyone has some kind of side hustle and, supplement their income on their days off. So my side hustle that I started when I was 26, which was a new side hustle because I had a side hustle in the fire department since I started. It really just it took off. It took off where it got to the point where I was vested into the pension, and I had to make a decision that if I wanted to take the company to the next level, I had to retire.
And so retirement, that's a fun word. What was your age at retirement from fire and public service?
I was 32 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is funny because I didn't start firefighting until I was 30.
Oh wow.
So
Yeah.
I was a late bloomer, if you will. So, but it's funny because most of the people that we were recruiting, just like you're saying, people fresh out of high school, usually prior sports athletes, they're usually adrenaline junkies or type A personalities, but they had to be coachable, trainable, programmable. At least in my world, as a hotshot, we were one of the elite crews. So I didn't realize until I showed up, it was like straight out of the Marine Corps type stuff or Navy SEALs type stuff. They broke you down. Like the first 2 weeks of the season, it was 2 PTs a day, no days off for 2 weeks,
Right.
2 weeks straight. Like just
Wow. Yeah.
and class in between, obviously coursework in between. So I look back at that. It's kind of funny you and I are talking about this because as you and I are recording this, in a week and a half, I'm flying back to Arizona. My old crew is having their 50th, like they're 50 years in existence. So they're
Oh
having their
wow.
first ever reunion. And my former superintendent from back in 2010 and 2011 is retiring this week. So it's like,
Oh
I'm going to
nice.
go back and see if I can reconnect and just meet the new blood. And just it's an excuse to go to Arizona. And but also I started a charity when I wrote my book, so the proceeds benefit a charity that I can guarantee, 501c3. And now I'm like, wait a minute, and I donate a percentage of all my business income into it as well. So I'm like the
That's awesome.
primary funder. I was like, I got to set up some type of scholarship or something, because the wildland world, unfortunately, the federal dollars don't make it all the way down to the people like the grunts that were on the on the hiking trail, or in your case, on the streets. I don't know if you guys saw or observed some of that in your way of
Oh yeah.
government funding.
Oh yeah. Yeah. A lot of that.
Yeah.
Yep. Especially when I first started, that's when the economy took a dump
Mm.
and all the cuts were happening.
Was that
So
08, 09? No, that's not 11.
yeah, that was around
Wow.
that
Okay.
time. Yeah.
Dude,
Yeah.
you are
Yeah.
younger than me. All right. I was like, just aged myself there for a second. Because actually, yeah, right after that, I went into it because I'm like, you know what? The income world is a hot mess. I wasn't happy with my career. Public service, what if the economy stays messed up? Like right after that, I went in. My rookie year was 2010. So that's kind of
Right.
funny how that all overlaps. You were coming into it. I was going into it, but for different reasons, I'm guessing. But it's funny how we talk about this side hustle thing. So let's pause on that. I didn't know the power of a side hustle back then. But the funny thing is, if I go back before firefighting, I always had a side hustle as jobs. Like I had people to this day to like, dude, you've done a lot in your life and you're only in your 40s. Cause I've been a bouncer, I've been a bartender. I used to teach spinning classes in the gyms. I was a personal trainer, all while I had my corporate jobs. I guess I didn't really date a lot. I just kept working, man. My 20s, I was hustling, but it wasn't the entrepreneurial side of it. I didn't realize
Right.
that until my 30s, until after that. And then I'm realizing like our fire life was a lot different than yours. You guys were doing that year round, right? You were
Right.
were you a city employee?
Yeah. City employee. It was
Okay.
career,
Yeah.
Pension, salary, whole 9 yards.
Yeah. None of that exists where I did.
Oh wow.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, the core of the crew, it does. A lot of people don't know this about Wildland World. Like the superintendent, and then there's two squad bosses. So what would you call that in your hierarchy of world? You had your captain or your chief, and then
Battalion
captains.
chief. Yeah, you get your battalion chiefs and then your captains.
Cool. Okay. So I have superintendent, then I had three squaddies because we had Alpha Bravo Charlie teams, and then a hotshot crew is 20 men or women strong. You cannot deploy to a wildfire unless you have your full head count. So if somebody's sick, injured, down, we're usually trying to pull talent from a nearby engine crew or something like that because we have to have that head count. But the only full-time employees in the government's world was the squad bosses and the superintendent. Everybody else, like me, were coming in as seasonal hires. So a lot of people don't know that about the wildland firefighting world is that most of the talent trying to fight wildfires are not full-time ranked federal employees. So you don't even get benefits. It's crazy.
Wow.
Like, it's like, so if you're assigned to a fire and your crew is officially now checked on a fire, if you're injured on that fire, you're protected, right? They'll pick up the dime hospital and they bill that back to the fire, to the tax dollars, yada, yada, yada. A lot of people don't know all these intricacies. So, and to the point where, so we did 16-hour shifts. And if you're on a fire, you're allowed to go 2 weeks straight without a day off. And then you time out for your 2 days off of health and recovery or R&R, which is kind of similar to what you guys did. And then you're right back at it again. So we would bang out 1,800 to 2,000 hours in a summer. So like the average 9-to-5er cubicle monkey, like I used to be a long time ago in a business world, that's like a normal year of work for an average 9-to-5er with 2 weeks paid a year. If you do the math, it's actually perfectly. You do 40-hour weeks all year long with 2 paid weeks off. That's 2,000 hours. And we did that in a summer.
Wow.
Yeah, but none of that. So, and here's the sad part. That's why I'm going back to Arizona. They haven't changed the base pay since 2010. It's still the same. And you wonder why you can't find talent or people willing to do this very dangerous job, because there's no pension. There's none of that unless you get into a full-time role and you're willing to commit, the next 10, 20 years. So you at least qualified for your pension, within 5 or 10 or what?
Yeah, I got vested after 10 years. I did a total of 12. So, got vested after 10 years. So, I got a nice little check. Might cover some health benefits or something once I hit that retirement age where I can collect. So,
well, that's good. So again, at least your service is being rewarded years later. If and when I retire, there's nothing there because I didn't do what you did. So I just like bringing some of that to light because this is part of that. For me, it's part of that fuel for the fire, right? It's like you and I are talking right now. It's like, well, why start side hustles? Why have a business or businesses? It's like, well, you got to supplement your income, right? If you want a better life, you either grow the crap out of one very successful business or you get a couple going and then you figure out which one's going to start leveling up and then you know which one to dump more fuel on, right? I mean, is that kind of how it worked for you?
Yeah, I mean, really it gives you got two choices on your days off. You're either going to spend the little bit of money that you're getting as a salary from the city, or you got to supplement it, So obviously, I didn't want to just spend the money. I wanted to make sure I get myself established and, have some good income coming in.
Well, and that's where, especially now, we're recording this in 2024, right? So yes, we're after the big 08-09 hot mess. And then we had other hot messes since, so pick your mess. And it's like, I like to kind of say that I'm hot mess proof because of our mindsets. And that's where even though we talk about health, business, lifestyle over the years, the mindset always rises out of amazing discussions I've had on this show, because you realize that just trusting the job or the career or maybe that one business, and if you just put blinders on, some success coaches will tell you that's how you crush it, right? You put blinders on and you're all in on that one thing. And I beg to differ. I was like, I've made some shifts. I've had a business fail and then I had to shift and I had to pivot. So if I hadn't stayed flexible or open to change or embracing or channeling that energy from one concept into a new concept, that I wouldn't be where I'm at today, right? So do you feel you've experienced some of that yourself? And have you had to share that with others so they understand like this growth cycle that we're kind of like all tapping into?
Yeah, I would say so. I definitely feel it myself. And, a lot of the guys that, worked at the fire department with me, they're people that actually reach out. They reach out, want to know more of kind of like how my mindset was, how did I make that shift, the things that I did. For some people, it's not as easy. They got families and whatnot. Fortunately, I could take a little bit more risk than others. I don't have children.
Mhm.
So
Same
for
here.
me, it was a bit easier to, start doing something else on my days off.
Mhm. Yeah, it's interesting because there's a lot of great success books out there. There's old school influencers with amazing quotes, like from Jim Rohn and all these guys. If you've gone down the growth route, personal or professional growth, or combine them both, you eventually start stumbling across the same names, the same influencers, or the same best practices that are shared. And that is a big part of it. It's like, listen, we all have the same 24 hours in a day. We all have the same 7 days in a week. It's what you do with it. So you have a day off. Well, yes, to your point, right? I could just go party and do whatever, catch up with friends and socialize, which you could still do that. But what are you doing to, again, hot mess proof your life a little bit? And it might not flourish for 5 to 10 years, but like at least opening your mind up, right? At least saying,
Right.
wait, what if? There's that what if. And it sounds like you've had that going since you were 19, right?
Probably even younger than that.
Hmm.
For me, one of the things that I always say is you have to be able to define your own definition of success, right? So if you define your own definition of success early on, then everything's going to be mapped out. For me, it wasn't really the financial component of it. Yes, part of my definition of success is being able to make powerful changes in the world, right? But that wasn't at the fire department. The fire department was a stepping stone to be able to reach what I consider success, right?
Okay.
So my definition of success is to be able to make some strong changes, right? Number one, part of that is making those strong changes is being a successful business owner where I'm able to provide jobs and be that great businessman who provides, a lot for other people. But truthfully, my definition of success is being able to make change in our world. How do you do that? You got to put yourself in a position of power. What's
Yeah.
a position of power? Yes, I'm a CEO of a company right now, has multiple locations, we're nationwide. Fantastic. That's still not going to give me my definition of success. Ultimately, my goal is to be able to sit in a seat in a legislative role, right?
Mm.
Political role, to be able to make some of these changes that have caused so many hiccups and a lot of difficulty for me to grow my own business, right? Because there's so many things that are antiquated, that are old statutes, old laws that don't fit the type of business that I have. So for me, it's being able to grow, gain these experience, and put myself in that position of power to make true change for the next guy.
Well, and I love that because one, we'll get into it a little bit here in a second, because you obviously, like me, care a lot about health and wellness and the natural paths that we could be taking versus pharmaceutical band-aids, as I like to call them, right? So, and that's what I love about part of your business background. But it's interesting how you brought up how the legislation piece, because I try not. I mean, I hop on, I make posts or have my team do it, and then I don't really live on social media. I get in and get out. And I remember there was a newer coffee shop here locally in Allentown, Pennsylvania. It was called shout them out, Nowhere Coffee, and super fun, chill spot. And they just went viral a few weeks ago because for some reason President Biden wanted to come to the area, and we don't get into politics in the show, so I don't care. But I was like, okay, he's in our area, and for some reason he wanted to go to Nowhere Coffee. Great, it was their second location. Well, ever since then, they've been even busier than they've ever been, and they were pretty successful before. Then I see these posts all of a sudden the past 2 weeks. Now, granted, I don't you. I'll agree to disagree their marketing techniques, but they're basically bitching and moaning because the township that they're trying to open another location at to do their own roasting now instead of buying other coffee roasts. They haven't been able to open their doors yet. The township drugged their feet. Then now they're telling them that they can't open because of zoning. And the
Oh,
funny thing is, the property is zoned commercial, and they're posting photographs of the paperwork from the township saying how it's zoned commercial and already approved for like businesses like a bakery. So they're like, wait a minute, you're saying that we're now against zoning because we just want to run a coffee roaster, but the site was already approved for bakery businesses.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's so anyway, that's just a fun example of how businesses can struggle. Like people
Right.
think it's always financial, or maybe it's finding reliable talent, which those are all variables. But then you
Right.
got something as simple as, people forget this: small businesses run this country, not corporations. The biggest amount of economic growth comes from entrepreneurs, right? People growing businesses or growing franchises, right? Helping people rise up and create a better life for themselves through small to mid-sized businesses. Yes, corporations make billions of dollars depending on the size company, but then you got this type of stuff. Like you can't grow your business because you're being handcuffed by this old statute, or somebody didn't file that piece of paperwork right. It's just
Right.
annoying.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's sad. Have you
Yeah.
struggled with anything like that?
Yeah. I mean, I think the hardest part is being in the health and wellness industry
Mm.
is that you got a lot of politicians, guys that are making some of these statutes and regulations that are putting them out there that have absolutely no background in medical and wellness, and they're making these decisions. So
Oh,
it's actually scary when you think about it.
it is scary because I've had countless scientists, doctors of all walks of life, cardiologists, MDs, microbiologists, health experts, investigative journalists in the health and wellness space, like Nita Teicholz. She's pretty popular out there in the ketogenic movement. I mean, countless authors, you name it. I've had a ton on there. I mean, we're approaching 500 shows, for God's sakes. And that's, I'm going to go ahead and screen share real quick for our video watchers on YouTube, because it is important to understand, like, there is other paths, right? So we'll just dig into this real quick. Your company is LiquIVida, LIQUIVIDA, D as in David A, ladies and gentlemen. But again, franchise model. So what powered you to go this route? Because it's such a huge discussion in the wellness space. And again, I kind of made fun of the medical already and called it the pharmaceutical band-aid. Because again, I just had my neighbor ask me, no joke, 2 days ago, he goes, "Hey, who's your MD?" I'm like, I got to look it up. He goes, "You don't know who your MD is?" I'm like, "I don't go." And he goes, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Unless I break a bone or tear a piece of tissue in my body, I've learned they don't know anything." No offense. I have friends that are MDs. They don't know what I know. I have an unfair advantage. Hundreds and thousands of hours of audiobooks and podcasts, not just my own show, but other people's content. And it's like, wait a minute. I have a regular monthly visit to a very, very hardcore muscular massage therapist expert. I have a monthly visit to my chiropractor. I have regular visits throughout the year where I'll do my own blood work, stuff like that. It's taken me years to get to this point. I didn't know all this stuff years ago, but now I'm like a geek about it. So I love finding businesses that help me geek out, right? So like I
Right.
just had at my chiropractor, she had a wellness day, and actually might be similar to what you do. Yeah. You guys do the IV bag thing?
We do. We
Yeah.
do.
So I forget the name of this business, but they have a branch here in Allentown. And I went there years ago when I collapsed a lung, and I was doing cryo chambers because they have a
Okay.
cryo chamber there. And because I was also competing in CrossFit competitions back then too. So, I get bored. And we were getting ready to do this ski trip to go out west. And I was like, man, I need an oil change anyway. And my wife's like, what? I was like, well, that's what I call a blood donation. I donate blood every 8 weeks. It's very good for you. I was like, why don't I just supercharge my blood? So I had him do the IV bag thing with all the vitamins and stuff, jacked the blood up, went and donated my blood. And then 2 days later, flew to Colorado. And then on that trip 2 weeks ago, we hiked in Aspen to a ridge. So you have to boot pack with your skis on your shoulder, 12,392 feet altitude. That's now the highest I've skied off of. And then we dropped in. I out hiked everybody, and I'm a pint low on blood. And people are like, dude, like my wife and her friends were like 20 minutes behind us. And I was like, and she's in the gym like 5 days a week. I have a gym in my barn. I might hit it a couple times a week. And people are like, man, you must be in the gym all the time. And I'm like, no, dude, I'm into wellness. There's more than just putting in the reps. What are your thoughts on that?
No, you're absolutely right, man. This is what we call, first step is you got to look under the hood, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got to figure out all the information about your body, the data, right? And then from there, you start customizing everything specific to the data. So that's one of the things that we do is we take more of that proactive, preventative approach to your health and wellness versus what we've been so used to, which in the world of traditional medicine, it's more reactive medicine, where
Yes.
we've taken that sick care model where we wait until you're sick to then eventually try to do something to make you well, versus, taking that proactive approach, coming in, looking at your blood work, looking at your hormone deficiencies, micronutrients deficiencies, things that you could have gotten exposed to, like certain toxins through food and environment, looking at autoimmune issues, food sensitivity, and then from there, customizing your nutrition, customizing your exercise, customizing all of your different regimens specific to your body's data.
Yep. Yeah, so I'm screen sharing again for the video watchers. Again, ladies and gentlemen, all these shows always go up on the YouTube channel for Live the Fuel. But I mean, again, I was just talking about IV therapy. I've done that. I don't need hormone replacement. I'm rocking and rolling there. My wife says I'm fine on the other category here, sexual wellness, right? But like metabolic health, this is huge right now. Huge. I mean, there's not enough, I'll call them practices that can help people with this. I was just at a KetoCon 2 years ago in Texas, and they had a mobile DEXA scan business. They had vans with the DEXA scan in them. I was so impressed, by the way. I forget the name of that company, but I've always wanted a DEXA scan. Nobody's got an easy access DEXA scan down the street from me here. I'm like, come on, man. I'd be in that sucker all the time just to prove to people how fit I am, because it's amazing how accurate that data is. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, the only thing as accurate or more accurate is the water submersion tank for proper, fat tissue, muscular tissue density, all that stuff, right?
So this is actually more accurate when it comes to body composition analysis.
Yeah, composition.
Historically, people know the DEXA for bone density, right?
Yep.
So women, when they hit a certain age, they have potential osteoporosis. So insurance covers them to get a DEXA scan to see how strong their bones are. Now, what we use it for is really looking at their body to see what it's made up of. So when people, get on that regular scale and look at total weight, well, what does that tell you? Like, it doesn't tell you how much fat you have. It doesn't tell you how much visceral fat you have, which if you have a high percentage of visceral fat, that's indicative of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and all kinds of other stuff. So what the DEXA scan does, when you go through that scan, it's using X-ray to basically tell you what your body's made up of. Intracellular water, extracellular water. You're looking at your adipose fat, which is more of that cortisol fat, the fluffy fat around your body. And then it's looking at the fat that lines your organs, which is called the visceral fat. And then it's looking at your lean mass, how much muscle you have, in your left leg versus your right leg. So when you start working with your like nutrition and let's say you want to lose weight or put on lean mass, it's good to have that data, because there's some people that go through like a weight loss program and they start losing all this weight because they have the caloric restrictions and they're losing the weight, but sometimes they don't know they're actually losing lean mass, which that's not good. So that's
I remind people
that
all the time. I'm like, guys, like my own neighbor, the guy who asked about the MD, he's retired, but he noticed he started putting weight on, and his girlfriend, same thing, and they're late 50s, approaching 60s. And I was like, well, a lot of that is hormonal, depending on what you're doing. And I was like, bro, you do drink a little bit, so I can't counteract that. That is a toxic activity. I mean, I do have a nice drink once in a while. I know that I'm ingesting toxins into my body, but let's look at everything else you're doing. And sure enough, he's doing stuff like tonic water instead of club soda, right? Tonic water is a sugar water. Then I'm looking at how he cooks. And there was a lot of, he was like, I still kind of have a soda once in a while. Like, I was like, dude, a lot of these basic things, you do that, especially as a male, you'd be surprised how fast it shifts. I left on vacation. I come back and he invites me over and he goes, so how do I look? And it had been a few weeks since I seen him. And I was like, why? He's like, dude, in the past 3 weeks, I've dropped 20 pounds. He's like, you're a freaking genius. I'm like, no, I'm not. I was like, people forget how much just the kitchen alone, and there's other variables. I mean, we're obviously, I was asking about his sleep health and everything else. And I don't have all your technology, but these are those things I've just learned over the years. I remind people, stop reading the men's health, women's health type magazines. I stopped those years ago. It's a lot of marketing. Just look at the traditional medical world. It's this drug is going to benefit you here. Oh, you want to lose weight? Take this drug. Like that went viral the past few months. That one drug that's like very freaking dangerous for weight loss that all the famous people are trying to take. I'm like, guys.
Well, I disagree on that, but I know what you're talking about.
Well, let's hit on that. Why do you disagree with that drug?
Well, the GLP-1, it's a peptide, right? So it does have a tremendous amount of benefits, and the clinical research behind it is actually showing some positive data, even for mitochondrial health. You know,
Well,
we
here's what I'm
actually,
concerned about. I agree with you. But what does big pharma want to do with that? A peptide is a pretty natural occurring thing, right? So
right.
now they're trying to get into the amino acids and everything else. I just heard this on the Joe Rogan show too. It was very interesting. He had a scientist on for that. And they're like, yeah, they're trying to say, great, what if we can't always push drugs forever? Now they're trying to basically say, well, what if we could patent or, basically own the market on supplementation and stuff like that? And that's scary because I'm like, well, a lot of people know, for example, maybe you guys source a lot of stuff. There's a lot of independent pharmacies that, like, the small mom and pop
The
pharmacies.
compounding pharmacies.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I was trying to remember the name. So, which I've actually been essential here in this country for years. Like, a lot of people didn't know that most of the drugs being issued in the hospitals are coming from these compounding pharmacies, because that's not big pharma. Like, the day-to-day stuff, they still depend on these compounding pharmacies.
They do. Absolutely.
And it's amazing, because then I checked with my chiropractor, then I checked with that other business that had the IV. Like, oh yeah, like, we all depend on these compounding pharmacies. They're amazing. And I said, I never realized that.
Yeah.
So, so you're right.
The problem is, obviously they're going to want to regulate it. It's sometimes, it comes out to a few different things, the money grab, what you're talking about on Joe Rogan, when they were chatting about that is, one of the new regulations that came out on behalf of the FDA, where they basically gave a warning on peptides.
Mm-hmm.
They basically said, hey, we are putting this on the do not compound list. A lot of these peptides, like BPC 157, a lot of these different amino acid fragment peptides that are extremely beneficial, and they came out without really any kind of response. They said, hey, this hasn't hurt anyone, but we just think you shouldn't take it. Yeah. Okay, well, what the heck does that mean?
Thank you. That's where I was trying to go with it, because I was like, these are naturally occurring things that are essential for day-to-day health. But because it's not a, quote, pharmaceutical drug, who do you think told FDA to issue that, right? Because money grab, or I always say for years, I always said, it's not about wearing a foil hat. This is legitimate stuff. It's like, no, dude, follow the money. It's really that simple. I mean, my own father, type 2 diabetic, never listens to me on his health. No one in the history of my family ever had diabetes. No history of heart, any of that. What do they go and do to him? He's been a type 2 diabetic for the past 9 years. All of a sudden, in the past year and a half, his new MD told him, you should be on a statin.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. You've heard this before. And I was like, you don't have heart problems. Why are you going on a statin? Well, the doctor said so. And I said, Dad, you're agreeing to take a drug that has documented side effects, and you don't have an official trigger. Why did they tell you to take that? Well, because they said type 2 diabetics, per the paperwork, have a high chance of developing heart disease. I'm like, yes, that's based on your day-to-day life. If you continue doing dumb things in your health and wellness, yes, a lot of diabetics have heart issues. It's not diabetes' fault. It's your fault. So, but my point is, like, if you don't have the issue, then don't take the drug. And now all of a sudden he's got issues where he can't raise his arm high enough, and he's having strength issues. So 2 weeks ago, he went off the statin. I told him, like, stop it. I was like, I'm not your doctor, but stop it. I was like, get a fourth opinion. Like, these are these things that just drive me crazy. And I'm sure you guys come across this all the time, because people aren't being educated on the possible natural routes we could take, the more wellness steps that aren't involving big pharma or a drug that has side effects, right? How can we help people with knowledge and education? That's why I love when I went through your site. I'm like, dude, he's got DEXA scans. He's got, like, I'm a geek about data. I was like, now you have data. Like, hey, here's where I was before, and here's why I'm 3 months later, 6 months later, a year later. You can't argue with data.
You can trend it, and if anything starts to pop up, you can kind of go back and kind of see where the adjustment needed to be made. If you get a sufficient amount of data. Listen, I wear my Oura ring wherever I go. I got my sleep
you
data.
do love the data.
I'm a data kind of guy. I mean, Oura ring actually did a whole article on me the other day, just because I talk very highly about the importance of data. Now, with what you were talking about, how these doctors are so quick to put people on these medications, this is the importance of really understanding who your doctor is, right?
Yes.
And making sure you're picking a doctor that you're not just coming in, they're seeing you for 7 minutes and they're moving on to the next guy. I mean, what can I really get through to you in 7 minutes besides prescribing you a bunch of medications that you don't need?
Yeah.
Like if we're going to take a
find root
deep
cause?
dive in your health, you got to get someone who's going to sit there, understand your health, really go ahead and dive deep into your data, and then from there give you what you need. And that's a functional medicine doctor. That's the type of
Just hit
doctor.
it. That was my next question for
else.
you, brother. I knew you'd hit it because I was like, dude, that's what I'm searching for right now is a couple of I call them FMDs, I mean, which is basically what they are. It's like they're actually that one business. They actually just took, the guy was internal medicine for 20 years. He's so frustrated with the system that he's leaving the traditional, quote, traditional medicine world or modern sick care. And he goes, I'm done. I can't take it anymore. He wants to go the functional route. And I love seeing that because, again, I'm not bashing MDs. They went into it for a reason. They wanted to have a successful career. They wanted to help people. The system is broken. It's going to take us years to try and find a way and get the right path, I guess, going. But what you're doing as a business and what I try and do just over the podcast and stuff like that is, okay, well, what if you are stuck with the 7 to 10 minute guy or girl, right, in the broken system? What if you came into it with all the data? Now you've just maximized your 7 to 10 minute cycle with data, right? Hey, you don't have this yet. I already had this done, right? So Sam's company, they did all this stuff. Here's where I'm at. And then maybe you get a better result out of that MD experience.
Yeah. Well, Scott, listen, I know you've seen that. How to Win in Modern Wellness. So
How to Win in Modern Wellness is the book he's holding up.
So I wrote this book, and as you can see there, delivering trackable results for inpatient consumers, right?
Yep.
We're talking about data. So all of these people, and this is what I want to mention here. This guy here, Dr. Robert Willix, unfortunately, he passed away about 4 years right before COVID. So Dr. Willix was my mentor. He was an ex-open heart surgeon who got sick and tired of operating and doing heart transplants and everything else. And he said, this was over 40 years ago. He says, you know what? I'm done with heart surgery. I'm going to go ahead and focus on functional medicine, taking that proactive preventative approach to patients' health so I can prevent them from having to be on the operating table.
I love it.
And that's where I learned most of my stuff, man. This guy, heart surgeon.
How'd you stumble across him?
So on my days off from the fire department, before I started LiquIVida, I worked with a company called Cenegenics.
I remember them.
Cenegenics, they were the pioneers in alternative medicine. Had some of the top doctors, cardiologists that left traditional medicine. And, we dealt with a very sophisticated clientele, some of the wealthiest people around the globe. And, I had about 350 patients that were Dr. Willix's here in South Florida. And I was the guy drawing their blood. I'd go every single 3 months to these big mansions. And I built these wonderful relationships with some of the wealthiest people around the globe, just drawing their blood. And, I saw some of these people. I did it for 8 years. I started when I was 20, the first year when I was at the fire department, all the way up to about 2 years after I started LiquIVida until I was 28. And I saw some of these people that came in with some issues, a lot of issues that you would think these people are just going down the drain. And you would just see the change. Every 3 months, I'd go to their homes. I mean, when they started eating right, exercising, those are the two most important ones, nutrition and exercise, right?
Moving the body is the fountain of youth.
Man, these people, I had people from going in that were in wheelchairs to all of a sudden walking to doing Ironmans, stuff that's like something out of a movie.
I love it. That's like, see, it just makes me smile. I tell people all the time, like, I used to be the gym rat. And then I realized, do I actually need to be the gym rat? I don't know. So then I started playing around with that. And I'm like, and I travel a lot on business. Like I did 37,000 miles just driving last year. I like to fly too, but I meet with a lot of different companies here in a 4-state region. Tomorrow I'm actually traveling I'm picking up a guy at Philadelphia airport. He's a COO of a big company, and he just did what you're talking about. He ended up, what are they calling that now? It's like a VIP doctor service, like
a concierge doctor.
Thank you, concierge. So he just went all in. He lives in Miami, so he's a Miami guy. He's like, oh yeah, I did the whole concierge thing. I'm like, oh, you went all in. He's like, I'm tired of the main system. I want somebody who's up to speed on me, my family, my children. I want to know we're all on the same page. I said,
Right.
cool. But and it sounds like this concierge is also partnering with some FMDs as well, and that's what I love to hear, because here's what drives me nuts. You and I both used it here on the show today. Traditional medicine. What's the definition of tradition? Because what we're talking about right now, functional medicine and addressing things before it becomes a reaction versus, more proactive. Well, that was Eastern medicine. That was the ways of,
Right.
Asian medicine and everything else. But we call what we have today traditional medicine, and we look at functional medicine as the woo-woo. And I'm like, are you on crack? Like, possibly they are. But it's like, no, we're talking about basic, easy things that people can adapt into their lives day in and day out. Maybe adding in a vitamin infusion from time to time to help them hit those hurdles, right? And that's what made me try IV therapy years ago. I did it before. Actually, dude, first time I did it was when they didn't know what was going on with COVID. I went right in there. I'm like, yeah, jack me up, dude. Throw me the whole,
Vitamin C,
immune system,
everything,
all
right?
of it. Yeah. I went through a week of that stuff. I was like, yeah, let's go. And my friends were like, oh, maybe I'll try that. I'm like, let's go. I brought like 5 people with me one day. So,
well, Scott, it's funny you bring up the whole Eastern medicine. And one of the things that we do, and I'm a huge advocate of this, is we integrate Eastern with Western medicine. I never disregard traditional medicine, because at the end of the day, it has saved a lot of lives.
Sure.
There's a lot of data behind it. But, right, if you could do certain things in your life, right, do more of that functional medicine approach, and not have to actually end up using traditional medicine, why not?
Well, that's my father. I love him.
Yeah.
But he thanks to modern or traditional medicine, he was just in the hospital for 8 days. He had an infection in his leg, and he's type 2 diabetic, so that's dangerous. A lot of swelling. He's had this before.
Right.
Turns out he wasn't paying attention. He had a callus on the bottom of his foot that became an open wound. Him and my mom, they're in their 70s. They weren't paying attention. Infection set in. Then while he's there, luckily, a great foot doctor, top of his field, said, you know what? Let me run an additional scan just to make sure there's nothing else going on. He found an infection in a metatarsal bone behind his pinky toe, a bone infection, even more dangerous. So thanks to modern medicine, I'm not bashing it, right? They found that. Now, unfortunately, they had to amputate his toe and remove that metatarsal bone due to the bone infection. So, but to your point, why did we let it get this far?
Exactly.
If he could have been listening to me, or again, I love my parents, but you can't, it's the hardest thing to help people closest to you sometimes. 10 years ago, when type 2 diabetes was found, if we could have reversed that then, because I remind people all the time, I've interviewed the experts, type 2 diabetes is completely reversible. This is something that we created due to modern nutrition, the SAD diet, standard American diet, all these things we have going on today after past 50 years. We've seen people, I've helped people reverse, like no longer on insulin, anything, just in my free time years ago as a health coaching people. And I'm sure you guys have now seen it too. It's like, yes, we can address this without going to these really extreme situations of hospitalization and amputation. Functional. Let's get functional. I love it.
Right. Yeah.
Do you guys have FMDs on your staff, or do you just partner?
Yeah. No, we have a bunch of MDs that specialize in functional medicine. Our mid-level practitioners, our PAs and NPs. Yeah. I mean, you'll see it on our practitioner.
The medical team. There we go.
Yeah,
I'm gonna throw that back up on the screen share because I was poking around on that. There we go. So are they giving them a new term, or is NMD a new term for the functional side? Or
we just stick with MDs who specialize in functional medicine. So, Dr. Christopher Davis, he's actually an interventional cardiologist who got sick and tired of
guy looks like a football player. Guy looks like he's strong, man.
I mean, he is. He lives him. Even Dr. Willix. Dr. Willix at the age of 75 was still doing the Ironman and placing. You got Dr. Kendrick Haywood, he's not just with us, but he's also with 10X Health Systems with Gary Brecka. Dr. Calipay, she was a Cenegenics doctor.
Yeah.
So we got some very strong.
I know Brecka. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Wow. Oh yeah, you got a hell of a lineup on here. Yeah. Now, so how many states are you guys in now?
So we are in 5 different states: New Jersey, Florida, Texas, Arizona, and Connecticut.
Oh, you are in Jersey. I
Yeah.
was born in Jersey. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm over in Allentown, so I'm only a half an hour from the edge of Jersey. So where in Jersey are you?
So we got Ridgewood, Marlboro, Middletown, and Princeton.
Okay. I'm going to have to swing by one of your sites one of these days. So I love to mix things up. When I travel, I'll try out a random massage therapist that I found out from a business colleague or whatever. Like I now have a regular person in Syracuse, New York. When it's over 3 hours from here, I'm like, well, whenever I'm up there on business, I book a session because she's really good at what she does. So, but that's the point. That's fun too. Like not everybody has to have destination places to go to. But my thing is, if you don't have it in your backyard, but you got somebody only an hour and a half away, until you can get it here, why not go and see what you're missing out on? And that's what I'm always trying to challenge people to do, whether it's massage, whether it's chiro, or whether it's businesses like yours. It's like, dude, what if you're missing something very, very easy that your team can help them analyze and at least try it, and then all of a sudden you start feeling better, right? And then maybe you do come off of a drug that has side effects, or maybe you even prevent having to even go there, right? The whole prevention versus reaction. I love it. This is awesome. So what's next for you, man? I mean, you've been growing the franchise, obviously. You got one hell of a medical team. I mean,
yeah.
What's going on next?
For us, it's, my goal is to change the course of medicine, with my medical team and, all my partners that I have that, we got sick and tired of the traditional medicine. So changing the course of medicine, and, there's certain ways that we're doing it. Obviously, as the franchisor, we're bringing this to the masses. That's our goal. Yep. We're bringing it to a certain group of individuals that have never had access to any of this, which, our goal there is to actually bring this to more of the inner city population where they haven't had access to these type of treatments.
I love that.
Most recently, now the beginning of 2024, I was appointed as the chairman of the American IV Association. So what we're doing is we're basically creating new standards. We put a scientific advisory board together, and we got a bunch of PhDs and MDs, DOs, and pharmacists that are helping lead the association. And we're going to be running a lot of clinical research on a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, more on the functional medicine side,
which is needed. When you put legit clinical research out there, now you can't argue with it. It's not one of these epidemiological things. Like, no, I want some data, right?
Yeah. So that's our goal. It's really get some good data. We got some lobbying efforts that are going to be done for with the FDA, more at the federal level, and then also at the state level, to really start putting some of these state statutes at rest and hopefully start making certain changes.
I love and I don't want to label it the wrong way. You say inner city, there is usually a strong percentage of either low income intertwined with that. I come from a low income family. Like what I know today and what I've done is not the way I grew up, because I chose to, I guess, create a different limb on the family tree, if you will. You got to rock the boat once in a while. But my point is like, how do we give back along the way and help other people rise up too? Because the healthier the inner cities are, the healthier a low income population could be. It benefits the country as a whole. That means you have more healthy, fit people to work and build more businesses, or just be a stronger labor force. If everybody's stuck on a sick pill or a sick injection the rest of their lives, but we can help, well, I hate to use the word, cure that or reverse that. Wow, that'd be amazing.
Yeah.
If you guys have a team that could push some major legislative shifts, I'm impressed. I'm definitely going to be following you guys a lot more as you keep executing on this, because this is
when we talk about the inner city, I like to call it the underestimated geographical locations, and really what it comes down to, the first step with that is not just offering these services that we offer, but education. There's, when I worked at the fire department, I was in a very metropolitan area, and the biggest issue was people just didn't have the education. So that's where we want to start, is educating the masses on really what they should be eating, really what they should be doing exercise-wise, certain supplements that people should take, making sure they're looking at their data, doing consistent blood work throughout the year, and then managing their health appropriately.
You need to connect. I got to drop a name on you. You ever hear of, I think he's PhD, Dr. Anthony Jay?
Not familiar with them.
So I had him on my show twice years ago. He's a big influencer in the carnivore movement as well, but a microbiologist background. And because he can read DNA. So I had no idea that when I brought him on the show, that's one of his business is reading DNA data and then putting together for people a supplemental health analysis to help you figure out what vitamins and minerals align with you or disagree with you, right? And what chemicals to avoid. And so to this day, thanks to him, he found in my background, we did a whole live podcast on it years ago because I was like, hey, I have nothing to hide. Let's talk all about it. I want people to learn from this. My genome benefits from glutathione, which is one of your services, right? You can get a glutathione supplementation. I had no idea that was a thing. I have a high risk of being like needing that. And I was like, cool. And I started using that and I noticed a major shift. I also did find out, thanks to his background, that apparently there's a genetic marker that I have, which shows that I can expel caffeine out of the body, metabolize it faster than like twice as fast as most human beings. Now I know why maybe I like coffee. But, you know, and some people don't like it at all. But it's just, again, that was my first dive years ago into data. So,
you know, that's where the medical community in traditional medicine lacks quite a bit.
Yes.
And I'll tell you really quick, you know, Dr. Willix would speak at these huge conferences. He would train doctors from all over the world in functional medicine. And I remember when I went to go watch him, he told me, says, hey, you got 1,000 doctors from all over the world here. I'm going to go on stage. And within the first 2 minutes, you're going to see at least 30 doctors get out of their seat and walk out. I said, well, why?
Oh, yeah.
And I watched it. And the first thing he started talking about was the Krebs cycle and the metabolic pathways.
Oh, I know that topic well. Yeah.
When you get into the body's biochemistry, where you actually have to know how things methylate and, you know, the lack of glutathione and NAD and NR, because it opens up the pathways, they don't want to hear it, right? Yeah. So if they're not going to take the time to do the tests that you did and look at the patient's epigenetics, their DNA, and see exactly what their bodies need, you know, with nutrients, right? There's 35 essential nutrients. We're talking about vitamins, minerals, amino acids, and fatty acids that your body needs to function. It's part of your body's biochemistry. So when you don't have a doctor who's taking care of your health, who's diving deep to understand what your body needs personalized to your body, you got to run. You got to run fast and go find a doctor who's going to actually take the time to look at that.
I love you hit on that because that is a big deal for me. For years, I had to choose to treat myself as my own N1 experiment, right? Like I didn't have enough information I mean, that's one of the reasons why I dove into the podcasting world in my free time. Like I'm busy in a lot of other things, just like you, right? We have companies to run, everything else. And it's like, well, yeah, but this is important. This is why it's health, business, and lifestyle on this show. I start with health and I end with lifestyle. Business is in the middle. Because this is how you have to be successful. You have to take care of what you got. We only have our set years on the planet and that's it. So, and now there's proof and evidence, which I've always said for years, that if you decide to have children and you decide to grow a family, you're passing that on. So if you're sacrificing your health and you're screwing yourself up and you choose to reproduce another human being, you're now passing that through. That is, you can actually reprogram DNA in a positive way or in a negative way. And that's what I love about all that we have the science now. We have the ability. Businesses like you guys exist. You can go and learn this stuff about yourself. So I love the fact that's why I wanted to get you on here. I was like, dude, here's a great example of now multiple locations in the country where I didn't have it this easy when I started. It was just me, I'll try this test once in a while and do this, or I found Dr. Anthony J or whatever, right? I'm out there just researching and trying to interview people. And then I'm like, cool, now I'm going to try you. Whereas, okay, now you can go to a business, align with functional medicine, and then they're going to not sell you everything, but they're going to help you figure out what's going to work for you, where you're at today, and start trying things. And now it's a guided N1 experiment, which I love. So, well, listen, it's been a great show today. I do have another show coming up, but you kind of just dropped a big bomb there at the end. But off of that theme, well, really a bigger theme, all my guest co-hosts help close the show out, and then I'll give you a proper goodbye off the air. But I asked as I've grown this show, it used to be just some final words to be left behind, which you just hit on. But it also became a legacy message for me. And some people align with legacy and some don't. But now that I know that you're really pushing to a much bigger picture, legislatively, inner city wise, whatever it is. So my question to you is like, is there a legacy message or a purpose that kind of sums it all up that you can shrink it all down? So that way, if people forget everything else we talked about today, they at least know this, right? Like, this is Sam, this is LiquIVida. Like, what are we doing? What is that legacy that you're trying to work on?
So my goal here is to let people understand truly what's most valuable, right? And you always hear people talk about the dollar, the yen, the crypto, and truthfully, the most valuable currency on earth is your health. So that's what leads me to tell you, health is wealth, Scott. Health is wealth.
One of my favorite quotes. Well said, sir. Listen, hang tight. Give your bumper goodbye. Ladies and gentlemen, I've used that quote for years. I haven't used it in a while. And of course, Sam's the co-host today. He rocked it out, man. Health is wealth. So if you have not heard enough today and you need to dig more, go to liquivida.com. It is a wealth information. Besides, obviously, that all their team is on there, but just look at all the crazy services. Even if they're not in your area yet, realize what is all available out there today that you could be doing differently. Find a functional medicine guidance. Again, we're not saying anti-MD, but again, health is wealth. All right. Start putting it first. And I'm guaranteeing you, you will become more successful, whether it be your job, your career, the business you want to start as a side hustle, like Sam and I have done it over the years. It's about putting health and wellness first because it just fuels the fire for everything else you do in your world. So again, ladies and gentlemen, we're here to fuel your health, your business, and your lifestyle. Sam helped us do that today. Thanks for tuning in. And remember, you too can live the fuel. And we'll talk to you guys again soon.